Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Let's Talk AI, where we try to make AI less intimidating and way more interesting. I'm Armen, and today I've got a very special guest, Aaron, Director of AI and Analytic Solutions from t.tec Digital. t.tec Digital is a leader in CX technology, helping businesses improve and streamline their operations with smart automation and AI. Focused on boosting customer satisfaction, efficiency, t.tec Digital works with companies to create seamless AI-powered experiences that are both innovative and effective. So super excited to meet Aaron. He has a lot of insights that I'm super excited to hear about. So Aaron, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Armin. It's great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. So let's start with getting to know you a little bit. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background, your work at t.tec Digital, so we can get to know you, and then I will jump into the real cool AI stuff that you have ready for us today.
Yeah, absolutely. So, by way of a little background, so I'm Aaron Schroeder. I'm based outside of Michigan in the United States here, and so my role at t.tec Digital is to really work with all of our clients on helping determine what the right strategy, what the right approach is for them to be able to make the most use out of their data, apply analytics solutions to it, and then ultimately get the value out of this new wave of AI. And so as a result, I've held a variety of different roles here at t.tec Digital that involve overseeing enterprise client engagements related to data, AI, and analytics strategies and implementations. I've been a technical architect in the realm of data engineering and data science, and really a host of other items. And so one of the most interesting ones is acting as one of the folks in this connective bridge we call our AI Center of Excellence between both t.tec and t.tec Digital, and helping bring together the best of technology and the best of what people bring to the customer experience to help open the eyes of our clients a little bit more and show what's possible.
No, cool. Thank you so much, Aaron. Really appreciate it. Um, Let's start with, I think I have them in my mind in topics. So the first thing I will start with is AI seems to be creeping into absolutely everything these days. But when I stop and think, I always watch the news. This is so good. This one is so good. Another thing that was very successful. But let's be real. It's not always the right fit. Do you have maybe a couple of examples where, let's say, AI worked beautifully, and some examples maybe where it
Mhm.
totally flopped?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, a lot of times people kind of, have this question of like, well, where do I begin? What do I do? And we tend to think that, especially in customer experience and contact centers, the low hanging fruit where things, you would be hard pressed to find a bad story is something like a call summarization or an interaction summarization or a contact summarization. Being able to, uh, take the sort of basic capability of an LLM, which is to take this massive unstructured data and boil it into something simplified. Summarization of any kind is the key. And so, in your personal life, that may look like, gee, I have this book that's been recommended to me. I've been meaning to catch up on it for 2 years now, but it's still sitting on the shelf. I wonder if there's a couple interesting points I could get to really get myself up and going and learn a little bit more. Ask it to summarize or distill a couple points from that book. So there's different things like that. I mean, that's the lowest hanging fruit is the summarization and the synthesis, the notes cleanup, and then frankly, code development as well. So we're seeing that the market is really voting with their dollars on that. We've seen things like GitHub Copilot and Gemini Code Assist. They're massive. They're taking off, and for good reason. It's allowing people to go from I have an idea to I have an application in really no time flat. And so there's some really, really great examples of that. But that works because you're kind of creating something, let's say, somewhat static. So if we're saying a summarization or a synthesis, most of the context you need is packed into what you're trying to distill. Or if you're developing an application, you're not concerned about, well, gee, the latest major version release of the JavaScript framework I have just came out yesterday, and I need to upgrade everything to that. You're really just prototyping and doing that sort of thing. So in those instances, it works fantastic. But in others, there are still some limitations. We've seen, a client came to us actually fairly recently to say they tried doing call summarization, but they were running into some issues for a lot of different reasons. And so when we unpacked it, it really came to a couple of different things. So one, the products they offer are highly specific. They use very pointed phrases and technical terms and jargons and abbreviations and things that their transcription software wasn't picking up on that well. And then the way that then that translates into a summary also falls apart. So you kind of have the classic upstream inconsistencies or confusion leads to problems later on. And so the way that all came to be was, this just isn't working. So they needed something that required a little more tuning and customization to what they needed. Now, another example I'll say. So this is one of my personal anecdotes. Is I use Claude a lot in my daily life. So Claude 3.5 Sonnet, and I'm always trying to figure out how to be a little bit healthier, take care of myself a little bit better. And so I'm working with Claude one day, and I'm saying, okay, I really want a higher protein breakfast. What can I do? And so I work out a recipe with Claude on something that's going to give me enough protein and healthy fat and all of this. And I'm manipulating this recipe. It gives me a protein bar. It seems great. I'm going, okay, I've put my faith and my trust into this AI model to produce something. And ultimately, this combination of almond butter and protein powder and all of this, it's dry. It's not coming together. I'm looking back at it afterwards, and I'm going, gee, some of the math here seems a little bit funny. And so by the end, rather than this nice edible protein bar, a couple hundred calories, I'd made myself about an 1,100 calorie dry, crumbly, frankly inedible protein bar. But it's because the way it puts the information together seems so convincing. It says, oh yeah, well, you need exactly this much, and if that's not working, try adding small amounts of this and small amounts of that, and it seems like it really knows what it's doing, but fundamentally it doesn't understand. It doesn't get what it's doing, and we see this. Some AI models will they're text based. They're meant to do text processing, and so when you ask it 13 by 13, it really isn't sure. It's going to give you a confident guess, but it isn't, perfect. And so, that really leads into, some things that we'll probably talk more about later here in terms of how to overcome some of these obstacles. But, I think that's really part of it is where it works. Some of those are very straightforward, synthesizing, processing, analyzing unstructured data, but where it doesn't, it still passes and feels like it might, and it can really get you. And that's what you don't want if you're an enterprise is you don't want to have that surprise 1,100-1,200 calorie breakfast, accidentally based on a convincing answer that came out of something that frankly hasn't burned you before, but there's always a first.
Yeah. And do you think those issues are permanent, or are we going to reach a level where AI can really handle everything?
Yeah, so I'll go bold and I'll say permanent, but so permanent, but and that's because all software has bugs. Anything we're doing there, and one could argue humans have bugs, right? If I ask you something, and then I turn around and ask someone else with a totally different set of experiences something, you may have two different answers. It doesn't mean one's right or wrong, but we're trying to apply these AI models to very specific situations where we feel like there should be a fact or a truth. And when you have this much of this much information, data, or what might constitute a worldview for an AI model, you're going to get varying answers. And so as a result, I really do think it's permanent, but we can overcome these. We can put better boundaries and guardrails and checks. And I think a lot of that stuff is still catching up to some of the capabilities. But certainly, I mean, you give an AI model, for example, access to a calculator tool, and it's not going to mess up 13 by 13. But if you're based purely on text-based and memorization, it's probably going to start pulling things up a little bit wrong. But that's because generative AI models aren't meant to be lookup tables or databases. And so, again, it's about complementing it with the right ecosystem of other capabilities and tools and routing that then helps overcome those. But at the end of the day, I mean, software is software, and we're going to have human biases baked into processes, baked into data, and so there will be some gaps. And I just think that goes to a really strong need for monitoring, for observability, for auditing of these things. And in many cases, it may be human in the loop permanently. The throughput could still be 1,000 times what it was before, but you may still need a human in the loop, and that's okay. That's the way it is. Not every manufacturing facility in the world has gone human free, for the same reason, even though robotics has come a very long way in the past, 50 to 100 years.
Yeah. And one thing you mentioned before around co-development, because I
Mm-hmm.
like to call myself a co-developer. We've tried with Yasir, who I hope is listening. We have done a lot of tried citizen development bots with a lot of apps that help you build low code and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. It worked beautifully. I really believe that in the future, and I said it also on a previous episode, that at some point, I don't know when, IT will stop being the IT function that we know today. I think it will mostly focus, that's my personal crazy opinion, don't judge me. I think that in the future, it will be to support with knowledge all the employees on how to build and fix their own things. Because at some point, it's moving so fast. There's so many tools, so many things that people have the way to do what they need without waiting like in the past for an entire function to, I don't know, click three buttons,
Mm-hmm.
which I make it sound so simple. But I mean, IT already is, technical people are already building apps for non-technical people to be able to use them. So I believe in the future, companies more and more will try to do to lean towards their people for non-code.
Yeah,
That's
and I've heard that described as, in the future, IT will be the HR function for the digital workforce. And I think that's really interesting, and there's a lot of ways that can play out, because when we see low code or no code capabilities in applications today, it's really okay. I don't need to do the configuration and to your point, click the three buttons, or heaven forbid, the 25 buttons to connect these things. Now I can just say, well, I need you to do this, and then it will be done. That assumes the application has the capability, and when it doesn't, well, now we're making it easier to build a customization. Well, I can build a customization, but should I? And so we've already seen in some cases the amount of uh, well-intentioned, totally custom bolt-ons that are being packed around different applications to achieve exactly what I have in my head and wanted to get done, is contributing to a level of complexity that then creates this reinforcement loop, because, well, there's 95 customizations. How do I make sense of what's happening? And honestly, funny enough, the answer is, well, you use a Gen AI model to help you understand and manage all of that and produce the documentation and create. And so it's really interesting to see some of the evolution of that. But no, you're absolutely right. And I mean, I think we've started to see a little bit of that out there.
And I think that shift will also help, them to focus on more robust things that people with no tech knowledge they cannot. Because I can imagine on every company, like IT has 3,000 billion things on their list, on their to-do
Right.
list, and most of them can be removed for some other non-tech people to deal with, and they can have some more time to focus on the rest. But anyways, you said something makes sense. Let's go to sense, because I've heard
Mhm.
many times in the past year a lot about thinking, reasoning.
Mhm.
I don't know who's reasoning. I don't know who's thinking. I have lost myself. So tell me a little bit around reasoning versus
Yeah.
the rest of the models. Like, what is happening in this area? If you, first of
Yeah.
all, if you can explain what it is and what's the
Sure.
difference with the typical models we've seen before, and then any benefits or how do you see it working out?
Yeah, and so the simplest way to think about this, and I'll apologize because this may not be the most technically accurate if someone's looking for a deep dive into how the scaling of these is actually occurring. We can do that on another more technical discussion later, perhaps. But the way these thinking and reasoning models work is they go above and beyond sort of have the input, produce the output, and they start to uh, collect a lot more context and self-assess their outputs. So at the time that they're coming up with things, they're sort of going, okay, well, is this right? Was that really the goal we were looking for on this? Yes, it is. No, it isn't. Maybe we take a left turn here a little bit. And so that's really fundamentally what underpins some of these. Now, as a result, they run longer, and so they can be a bit slower. They tend to be more useful for more intensive activities, and so truthfully, that's reflected in the name of some of them because you have things like Google Deep Research or, funny enough, OpenAI Deep Research that are both backed by these sorts of models. Then with a lot of other tools and technologies at their disposal, such as the internet, a computer, the ability to browse, all of that. And so that's what they're really doing here. Now, what's different about these is that prompting is different. So prompt engineering really took off. In a big way in the past few years because a little sprinkle of magic can make all the world of difference between a useful output and something that is way off the mark or in a useless format to what you're trying to get done. And so folks are still kind of learning what it means and how it looks to prompt these effectively. And it does look like a lot more context, a lot more detail. Don't tell it how to get to the endpoint, but tell it what you really need out of it. You're almost goal setting over anything else. Whereas before you were really in the act of prompting a typical model, trying to say, go about it this way, and this is what I need. And so those are really these thinking, these reasoning models are pushing the limits on what's possible and really the level of analysis that can be done. And when I say analysis, I mean unstructured data analysis, incorporation of more complex sources, but also data analysis. You think, what if I had a data analyst in a box that I could ask questions to and have it connect a lot of different points from different angles and come up with something interesting? So that's really what's going on here. And the other thing to know is they're not really meant for chat in the way that customer service or CX chatbots historically have been. They are for more intensive activity, and so knowing when to use that versus when to use a standard Gen AI model. Gee, it feels funny to call them standard at this point already. It's only been a couple of years, almost the legacy Gen AI models. But knowing when to use which one is a really big deal because it costs. The cost difference is huge. The time difference. All the capabilities, and so really, it's interesting to see this evolution in models and capabilities. And as always, as with all things in the digital realm, what's the right tool for the job, and what came out in the last week that needs to force you to update your priors.
Yeah. And you mentioned the deep research from Google, from OpenAI. And do you think we're getting closer to having AI reason like a human or better?
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Because you definitely see big bold claims from some of the executives that they now surpass the capability of a PhD candidate or surpass the capability of a PhD candidate in an adjacent field or in their own field, and um, not to rain on anyone's parade, but my fundamental belief in this is that it underrepresents how well-rounded humans are, because that's great that it can outperform a PhD candidate in their own field in a specific space. But I really think there's still some flaws in how they manage an ever-changing world. We're in the customer experience space. We know humans are incredible and contact centers are resilient, but the human experience can be very messy, very confusing. It can change in a heartbeat. And so one example of this is the temporal reasoning capabilities of this. And what I mean is, there's an engineer from Meta that has posted a lot online on some of his work in analyzing the capabilities of these thinking and reasoning models. And one thing he asked them was, hey, go through every single NBA team and tell me the player on each roster that is most likely to defend LeBron James. Seems straightforward. You and I could do that. Maybe we don't know that much about basketball, so we're going to have to, do a little bit more cross-referencing, but we could look that up. Well, instead, these models come back with players that were traded 3 seasons ago, players that are injured right now, maybe a slight mismatch of who's on what team, or a team that doesn't exist anymore. And so that's still a really big deal, because we know when you're running a contact center or a customer experience center, that there is still this element of, oh, we have to issue an agent awareness bulletin or a product advisory note because something important is happening, or there's various turmoil in the world that we need to be aware of and we need to take into consideration. These still aren't quite there. They will get better at incorporating these things, but I think that's one of the huge hills to climb. And so it sounds great on its surface, and it works really, really well. But again, for sort of frozen in time, static points of view or synthesis that's necessary, and maybe you're not worried about changing over the course of the next 6 months. But again, working in customer experience, I'm always worried about what's going to change over the next 6 months.
Yeah, makes sense. And talking about the next 6 months, tell me a little bit about multimodal AI. Why is this
Mhm.
such a big deal? How does this, or if
Yeah.
yes, how will it change the way we interact with technology?
Yeah, so I think we saw some really interesting precursors that, or early indicators that multimodal AI was going to be going to happen in a big way, going to take off in a big way. And so that is my big belief. That's my big bet for 2025, is that multimodal is we're going to see just a massive rise. Everyone is coming out with their thinking and reasoning models and all of these things, but multimodal is I think ripe for the takeover now. You hear about a lot of really well respected coders and tech professionals that say, I barely touch my mouse anymore. I just speak, and then it's able to either transcribe what I say or turn that into code or something like that. And that's fundamentally what multimodal AI is, going from whether it's voice or text or video or image into voice or text or video or image in any number of ways, and frankly combinations of those. So I'm going to feed a little bit of text context, an image, and then a supporting video, and I'm going to get a result that tells me, oh yeah, okay, well this is what you need, and then be able to chat with that as well. So it's not just a one and done, but keep that going. And I think that's huge. There's some really, really interesting capabilities, whether it's through our really talented engineers at t.tec, or other places that are doing, say, voice to voice translation at scale in ways that required 100 human interpreters before to be able to translate. But now, there's really this emerging capability to do something more with that. We're working with automotive manufacturers and claims adjusters to be able to better understand what's going on in a picture that was submitted to a dealer, or submitted directly to that manufacturer, to understand is this right? Should we be able to move this case forward, or did are they saying, well, I have an issue with my rear bumper, and they send a picture of the steering wheel. It happens more often than you'd think. And so there's already a lot of spaces where in the world we got used to OCR. I take a picture and I can pull structured data off of a form, or I take a picture of a check to deposit it into my bank account. Well, we can go several steps further with that now and really accelerate workflows and help people in a way that we couldn't before. And that's my belief, is multimodal AI is a huge thing, especially for the year 2025. We're going to see it take off in a big way. We're having more conversations, meaningful conversations, production implementations than ever before with our clients. And I think it's something people really have to get behind.
Okay. Yeah, it seems indeed something, because I'm thinking on how we work, right, as humans, with all the elements together. And I'm thinking how much it would help someone if one thing could just do everything. So yeah, I'm there with you.
Right.
Another thing that everyone is buzzing about is agentic AI. First off, how do we even pronounce it correctly? And second of all, what does it mean?
Yeah, and so it's really getting mashed up a lot with these thinking and reasoning models, because it's it is really how you bring a lot of these different elements together in terms of multiple modalities, being able to better analyze and reason through what you're trying to achieve, and then apply that to processes. So when we talk about agentic AI, we tend to talk about it in terms of levels of agency. And so, are you setting something up that does exactly what you say to do, if then statements, and that's it, and go, okay, well, that's the lowest level. There is no agency involved. About a midpoint in the spectrum is research, think about it, and then provide me a recommendation. So that's your classic human in the loop. But then on the full end, there's do it and don't bother me. That's it. Maybe log what you've done, and so I can go back and check it out later. But just take care of the problem yourself. And so that's really the holy grail. That's what people want to see, is more of that kind of workflow. And so when we say agentic AI, it's getting to those upper levels of agency, where I have a digital worker, so to speak, that has enough context about my company, my brand, the situation, who they're dealing with, and be able to take care of an entire process or workflow self-contained. And we're seeing some of the leaders in the market really start to show some novel cases for this. The Microsoft, ServiceNow, Googles of the world are going at this in a big way, because if your processes are already, in some cases, or your workflows are codified, then it should be easier to be able to apply again this digital worker, this notion of an agent to it, and have them be able to execute. And so they can use interfaces meant for human beings, so you don't have to go through all of this massive API development to be able to get there. It really is this digital twin of your best worker that is then applied to new and interesting areas. But this is also tempered by where people are comfortable deploying it, because I can always sit my worker down and talk to them about updated policies and where this went right, and trust that they can learn from the experience. Um, with agentic AI, there's really more black and white. There's less room for gray, because they're going to decide, or they're going to get hung up and then have to wait for human intervention. And so we hear a lot of our clients say, well, my responsible AI group will never allow this, or we don't feel there are sufficient guardrails to be able to take this forward. And so, again, back to the point of, well, IT will be the HR function for these digital workers. I mean, that's a really big part of it. Is, okay, in theory, everything exists today for me to be able to unleash this on a million processes, but what's going to happen? And I don't know, let's go for it anyway, is not anything I've heard any client actually willingly lean into. So, yeah, agentic is the future. I think it's the thing of 2026 and beyond. Truthfully,
Okay.
that's my bet. So we can revisit this in November of this year and see how my crystal ball is working. But I believe 2026 and beyond, we're going to start to see a higher uptick in the agentic AI adoption and some meaningful, true use cases as the legal, the ethical, the responsible AI, concerns start to be alleviated, and some of the lower hanging fruit, easier to uptake, lower risk areas for implementation get identified and can really start to emerge.
Yeah, because I was gonna ask you if you think it's overhyped or if you think that's the future. But if that's on your on Aaron's calendar, 2026,
That's
that
right.
means it's not.
Yeah. No, I mean it's I think as with all things, you're gonna see a pretty big disparity between different industries because healthcare is not interested in this, right? There's a human being and somebody's health behind every single interaction there. And that's just not something that anyone's taking lightly. But then you look at something like retail, and some people would argue that, well, there's a huge financial impact if I let an agent process refunds. But today, if I need to return something, half the time, Amazon already tells me, yeah, just go ahead and keep it, recycle it, and we'll give you the money back. And so there's no Gen AI in that loop. So I think some refund processes are already at that stage of maturity and they don't need Gen AI, but others where someone maybe has a risk profile where they say, well, gee, I do want some thought put into whether this is going to happen or not. You'll see it start to apply there, and so yeah, you'll see a disparity between different industries. And so I'm not here to tell you that January 2026 your doctor will really just be in a back office and be clicking approve on a million different diagnoses. But I think you'll start to see again some of the lower risk, some of the faster moving, higher tech industries go a long way with this one through the next year. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Now that I have the Aaron's calendar for the next 2 years, I just want to get your opinion on something that I ask, a topic that I ask everyone who comes here, and that's making smart AI choices in business.
Mhm.
With so many tools offering, I don't know, almost the same features, or maybe here and there some of them a little bit different,
Mhm.
especially things like agent assist. Like, how do businesses even begin to pick the right thing?
Yeah, so that's a good one, and this is probably what I spend more time than anything on these days. Is there's just the Gen AI flood. Everybody's added something into their platform, and so now it's I can't be left behind. Okay, I'm going to take Aaron's advice from the start. I'm going to go for call summarization. Well, wait, do I need to do that in my CCAS platform? Do I need to move that transcript somewhere into my CRM and have that do it? Do I need to have that happen somewhere else entirely, even? And so, yeah, I think Agent Assist is a great example. We see knowledge management systems with it. We see CCAS solutions with it. We see QA and QM platforms with it. We see CRM. You can buy a standalone. There's so many different ways to do it. So yeah, it's a great question. How do you choose between them? And a lot of times it comes to investment. Where is your data gravity today? Where is your application gravity? I think that there is some major benefits in rationalizing application stacks because you're going to be better protected against the customization complexity and the sprawl that I mentioned earlier. I think there's benefits there as well to say, well, your data is in one place, you're not moving things around, you're maintaining more consistent sources of truth. That's the biggest one, I would say. But the other element is user experience, because at the end of the day, you have individuals you are trying to help with this and trying to speed up through this. Don't introduce a 90th tool. Don't introduce something that's a weird, goofy bolt-on that's fed in. And so it really is about, well, where is a person, whether that's your customer, whether that's your agents, whether that's management and executives looking to get something out of this, where are they going to be naturally today when they are looking to take this kind of action or gain this insight or whatever it might be? Well, let's focus on that. How do we find something that is going to most seamlessly be a part of that workflow, because then you're going to be able to speed this up. You're going to be able to have higher adoption, and that's what it comes to. I guess it's not a huge surprise to hear a customer experience person say, "Well, think about the agent experience, the customer experience, the management experience." But that's what it comes to. Is these are meant to be massively powerful tools in what you're doing today and speeding them up. And if you're going to transform a process, that's great. But how do you make it so you have the lowest barrier to adoption, highest throughput, all of that? And it comes to, where do I need to be today when I'm doing that? And I think the rest of the decisions start to really fall into place from there as you then layer in, okay, well, is it productivity? Is it revenue gain? Is it, something else entirely? And so that's really what I would say. And where it is you've got 20 applications that are knocking on your door, and each of them is saying, I can do this. I can do this. Well, you know, there will be, I think, only a couple of clear winners, and experience is going to win out.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much for sharing, Aaron. And thank you for sharing in general all the great insights. It has been an awesome conversation. So I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're super busy to join us and break down AI in a way that even I can understand it. I always say, if I can understand it, that means everybody can. So I really appreciate you joining us today and sharing all those insights with us.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Armin. It was great to be here.
Yeah. And to everyone out there listening, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Until next time, stay around, stay curious. See you on the next one.